The night Elena Whitmore was thrown into the snow to die, the most dangerous man in the city decided she was worth saving. Her stepfather locked the door behind her. Her body went numb. She thought she'd become just another frozen corpse by morning. Then a black car stopped, and Damien Cross, the man everyone feared, stepped out and carried her away from death itself. But survival came with a price, and Elena would soon learn that the line between savior and captor is thinner than she ever imagined. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city below. Let's see where you're watching from. The cold didn't feel like cold anymore. It felt like teeth. Elena's knees hit the pavement first, then her palms, and the impact barely registered because everything had gone distant and wrong. Behind her, the front door of the house slammed shut with a finality that made her flinch even through the fog filling her head. She heard the deadbolt slide into place, heard her stepfather's voice, muffled and satisfied, saying something to someone inside. Probably her mother. Probably telling her to stay put, to keep quiet, to remember what happens when she doesn't. Elena tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. The wind tore through the thin cotton dress she'd been wearing when he'd grabbed her by the arm and dragged her to the door, and she realized with a strange, floaty sort of clarity that she wasn't going to make it back inside. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. The streetlights blurred into smears of gold and white. Snowflakes landed on her eyelashes, on her lips, on the bare skin of her arms where goosebumps had long since given up. She crawled forward a few feet, then stopped. What was the point? The neighbors wouldn't help. They never did. They'd learned years ago not to hear the screaming, not to see the bruises, not to ask questions that might bring Martin Whitmore's attention to their own doorsteps. Her fingers were blue. She stared at them, fascinated. She'd never seen her own hands look like that before. Somewhere far away, a car engine rumbled. Elena didn't look up. Couldn't. Her neck had stopped obeying her, and besides, what did it matter? Someone driving past, someone going home to warmth and safety, and all the things she'd stopped believing in years ago. Let them pass. Let them pretend they didn't see her. Everyone else did. But the engine didn't fade. It grew louder, closer, and then it stopped altogether. A car door opened. Footsteps, quick and purposeful, crunching through the snow. Jesus Christ! The voice was male, low, controlled in a way that suggested control didn't come easy. Elena felt hands on her shoulders, turning her over, and she wanted to tell whoever it was to leave her alone, to go away, to stop touching her because touch always hurt, and she was so tired of hurting. But her mouth wouldn't form the words. Can you hear me? She managed to focus on the face above her. Dark eyes, sharp features, expensive coat, a stranger. I'm calling an ambulance, he said, already reaching for his phone. No. The word came out as barely a whisper, but it came out. No hospital. You're freezing to death. He'll find me there. The stranger went very still. His eyes searched hers, and Elena saw something flicker in them, understanding maybe, or recognition of a particular kind of fear that couldn't be faked. Who will? She couldn't answer. Her teeth were chattering too hard. The stranger looked past her toward the house. Lights glowed in the windows, warm, golden, mocking. Then he looked back at her and his jaw tightened. My car's heated, he said. I'm taking you somewhere safe. Nowhere safe. Try me. He didn't wait for permission. He slid one arm under her knees, the other around her shoulders, and lifted her like she weighed nothing. Elena's head lolled against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and she thought distantly that it had been a long time since she'd been close enough to another person to hear something like that. The car was warm, blessedly, impossibly warm. He set her down in the passenger seat, and she immediately curled into herself, shaking so hard her bones felt like they might crack. He stripped off his coat and wrapped it around her, then got into the driver's seat and turned the heat up as high as it would go. What's your name? He asked as he pulled away from the curb. Elena. I'm Damien. He glanced at her. Elena what? Whitmore. She swallowed. Who are you? Someone who's going to make sure you don't die tonight. She wanted to laugh. The absurdity of it, being saved by a stranger with a nice car and a voice like gravel and silk, was almost too much. But laughing would take energy she didn't have, so she just closed her eyes and let the warmth seep into her skin. "Where are we going?" she asked after a while. "My place." "I don't know you." "No," Damien agreed. "But you know him, the one who'll find you at the hospital, and you know what happens if you go back to that house." He kept his eyes on the road. "So unless you've got a better option, you're coming with me." Elena didn't have a better option. She didn't have any options. She'd stopped having those 3 years ago, the day her father died and her mother married Martin Whitmore in a fog of grief and desperation. Martin, who'd seemed kind at first. Generous. A man who'd promised to take care of them, to give them stability, to be the husband and father they needed. It took 6 months for the mask to slip. The first time he hit her mother, Elena had threatened to call the police. Martin had smiled, that slow, cold smile that never reached his eyes, and asked her if she really thought anyone would believe her. He was a respected man, a businessman, a pillar of the community. And what was she? A 17-year-old girl with no proof, no witnesses, no one who'd take her word over his. He'd been right. She'd tried anyway. She'd called. She'd reported. She'd begged. They'd come to the house, those bored-looking officers, and they'd listened to Martin explain that his stepdaughter was troubled, acting out, making wild accusations because she resented him for marrying her mother. And they'd believed him. Of course they had. He was calm, reasonable, concerned. She was hysterical, desperate, clearly unstable. After that, things got worse. Martin didn't just hit anymore. He controlled. Every dollar, every movement, every breath. Elena's mother became a ghost, shuffling through the house with her eyes on the floor and her voice barely above a whisper. And Elena learned to be invisible, to stay out of his way, to swallow her rage and her fear and her hatred until they became a permanent knot in her chest. Tonight, she'd failed at being invisible. She'd made the mistake of asking for money, just $20, enough to replace the shoes that were falling apart, the ones she'd been wearing for 2 years because Martin wouldn't buy her new ones. He'd called her ungrateful, selfish, a burden he never should have taken on. Then he'd dragged her to the door and thrown her out into the snow. "We're here," Damien said, and Elena opened her eyes. The building in front of them was tall, sleek, the kind of place she'd only ever seen from a distance. Security cameras tracked their approach. A doorman stood at attention under a pristine awning. Damien pulled into an underground garage and parked in a spot marked Reserved Penthouse. Elena stared at him. "You live here?" "Yeah." "Who are you?" He turned off the engine and looked at her properly for the first time since they'd left the house. In the dim garage light, his face was all angles and shadows, handsome in a way that felt dangerous. "Does it matter?" he asked. "I need to know who just picked me up off the street." "Damien Cross." He said it like she should recognize the name. She didn't. He seemed almost relieved. "Come on, you need food, dry clothes, and about 12 hours of sleep." The penthouse was obscene, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that probably cost more than her mother's car, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in a museum. Elena stood dripping melted snow onto polished hardwood and felt like an intruder. "Bathroom's down the hall," Damien said, shrugging off his suit jacket. "Second door on the left. There's a robe on the back of the door. Get out of those wet clothes before you get hypothermia." Elena didn't move. He sighed. "I'm not going to hurt you." "Everyone says that." "Yeah, well..." He met her eyes. "I'm not everyone." She wanted to argue, but her body was screaming at her to get warm, to get dry, to stop shaking before her bones snapped. So she went. The bathroom was bigger than her bedroom. Heated floors, a shower with 6 different settings, towels so thick and soft they felt like they'd never been used. Elena peeled off her wet dress with numb fingers and stepped into the shower, turning the water as hot as she could stand. The heat hurt. It hurt so much she gasped, but she stayed under the spray anyway, watching the water circle the drain and trying to remember how to breathe normally. When she finally got out, she found the robe Damien had mentioned. Black silk, expensive, too big for her, and wrapped herself in it. Her reflection in the mirror was a mess. Wet hair plastered to her skull, hollow cheeks, eyes that looked too old for her 20-year-old face. She looked like someone who'd been drowning for years. When she came out, Damien was in the kitchen. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black sweater, and he was doing something with a pot on the stove that smelled like heaven. "Sit," he said, without looking up. She sat at the island, pulling the robe tighter around herself. "Soup," he said, setting a bowl in front of her. "It's just chicken and rice. Nothing fancy." Elena stared at it. When was the last time someone had cooked for her? She couldn't remember. "Eat," Damien said. It wasn't a suggestion. She picked up the spoon. The soup was perfect, hot, savory, exactly what her body needed. She ate slowly at first, then faster, and by the time she looked up again, the bowl was empty, and Damien was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "More?" he asked. She shook her head. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you were dying in the street." "People die in the street all the time. Most people drive past." "I'm not most people." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Tell me about him, the one you're afraid of." "My stepfather." "Name?" "Martin Whitmore." Damien's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. "The Martin Whitmore? The real estate developer?" Elena's stomach dropped. "You know him?" "I know of him." Damien's voice had gone very quiet. "He's got a reputation." "For what?" "Being clean on paper, ruthless underneath." Damien's eyes narrowed. "How long has he been hurting you?" 3 years. "And your mother?" "She's still there." Elena's hands tightened around the empty bowl. "She won't leave. She's too scared." "Of him. Of everything." Elena looked up. "He controls the money, the house, everything. If she leaves, she has nothing. No job, no savings, nowhere to go. He made sure of that." Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened and walked around the island until he was standing in front of her. "You're not going back there," he said. "I have to. My mother is a grown woman who's made her choices." His voice was hard. "You're not responsible for saving her. She's my mother. And he'll kill you if you go back." Damien's jaw tightened. "You know that, right? Tonight wasn't a warning. It was an attempt." Elena's throat closed. She knew. Of course she knew. Martin had looked at her with cold satisfaction when he'd pushed her out into the snow, like he was finally getting rid of a problem he'd been too patient with for too long. "Stay here," Damien said. "At least for tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." "I can't just—" "Yes, you can." He held her gaze. "You can stay in the guest room. Door locks from the inside. I won't bother you. But you're not going back to that house." Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to explain that it wasn't that simple, that she couldn't just abandon her mother, that running away wouldn't solve anything. But she was so tired. "Okay," she whispered, "just for tonight." Damien showed her to the guest room, another space that felt too big, too nice, too much. The bed was massive, covered in what looked like Egyptian cotton sheets. There was a bathroom attached, and when she opened the closet, she found it stocked with women's clothes in various sizes, all with the tags still on. "Why do you have all this, Uis?" she asked, turning back to Damien. He shrugged. "I like to be prepared." "For what? Random women you pick up off the street?" "You're the first." She didn't know if she believed him, but it didn't matter. She was too exhausted to care. "Thank you," she said. "For tonight, for the food, for all of this." Damien nodded. "Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning." He left, closing the door behind him. Elena stood there for a moment, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then she locked the door, climbed into the bed, and pulled the covers up to her chin. The sheet smelled like lavender. The mattress was soft. The room was warm. Elena closed her eyes and waited to feel safe. It didn't come. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For a few disoriented seconds, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling was wrong. The light was wrong. Everything was too quiet, too clean, too... Then it came back. The snow. The stranger. The penthouse. Elena sat up slowly. Her body ached in places she'd forgotten could ache, and her head felt like it was stuffed with cotton, but she was alive. Warm. Not dead in a snowbank. She found her dress from last night draped over a chair, clean and dry. Someone, Damien, presumably, had washed it while she slept. Next to it was a note in sharp, precise handwriting. Clothes in the closet should fit. Help yourself. Elena opened the closet again and stared at the options. Jeans, sweaters, dresses, all in sizes that ranged from small to medium. She grabbed a pair of jeans and a dark green sweater, both of which fit well enough, and ventured out of the room. Damien was in the kitchen again, standing at the stove with a newspaper spread out on the counter. He looked up when she entered. Coffee, Aunt? He asked. Please. He poured her a cup and slid it across the island. Elena wrapped her hands around it and breathed in the steam. How'd you sleep? Damien asked. Better than I expected. It was true. Once exhaustion had finally pulled her under, she'd slept hard and dreamless. You? Fine. He was lying. She could see it in the faint shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He'd probably been up half the night doing, what, researching Martin, planning something, or just standing guard like he thought she might bolt in the middle of the night. I need to go back, Elena said, just to check on my mother, to make sure she's okay. Damien's expression went flat. No. She's alone with him. After what he did to me, he might hurt her worse if you show up. Damien set his coffee down. Think about it. You disappeared last night. He doesn't know where you are, doesn't know if you're alive or dead, doesn't know if you went to the police. Right now he's scared. Scared men make mistakes. If you walk back in there, you give him control again. So I'm just supposed to leave her? No. Damien picked up his phone. You're supposed to let me handle it. Handle it how? By getting her out. He scrolled through his contacts. I know people who can extract someone from a bad situation quietly, cleanly, without anyone getting hurt. Elena stared at him. Who are you? Damien looked up. I told you, Damien Cross. That's not an answer. He studied her for a moment, then set the phone down. You really don't know, do you? Know what? My name. He almost smiled. Most people in this city know my name. I've been a little busy surviving to pay attention to local celebrities. I'm not a celebrity. Damien leaned against the counter. I'm a businessman. I own things. Properties, companies, interests in various ventures. Some of them are more legitimate than others. Elena's stomach sank. You're a criminal. I'm a pragmatist. He didn't look ashamed. I operate in gray areas because that's where things get done. I have resources your stepfather doesn't, and I have people who are very good at solving problems. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. I know enough. You know nothing. I know you were dying in the snow and no one else stopped. Damien's voice was quiet but intense. I know your stepfather is a piece of shit who's been terrorizing you and your mother for years. I know you're scared and alone and you think you don't have options. He straightened. And I know that I can give you those options. If you let me. Elena set her coffee down with shaking hands. What do you want in return? Nothing. Nobody helps for nothing. I do. Why? Damien looked at her for a long moment. Because I've seen what happens when no one helps. And I've got the means to do something about it, so I am. It was the most ridiculous thing Elena had ever heard. Men like him, rich, powerful men who operated in gray areas, didn't just help people out of the goodness of their hearts. There was always an angle, always a price. But what choice did she have? If you get my mother out, she said slowly, where would she go? Here, or somewhere else safe. Your choice. And Martin? What about him? You can't just leave him alone. He'll come after us. He'll find us. He always does. Damien's expression went cold. Not if he can't. What does that mean? It means I can make sure he's no longer a problem. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. Permanently, if necessary. Elena's breath caught. You're talking about killing him. I'm talking about neutralizing a threat. Well, Damien picked up his coffee. There are lots of ways to do that. Murder's messy and draws attention. I prefer cleaner methods. Financial ruin, legal consequences for the crimes he's committed, making him disappear from your life without actually making him disappear. He looked at her. Unless you'd prefer something more permanent. No. The word came out too fast. No, I don't want... I'm not a killer. I didn't ask if you were. I asked what you wanted done about him. Elena's head was spinning. This was insane. All of it. 24 hours ago, she'd been trapped in a house with a man who wanted her dead, and now she was standing in a penthouse discussing the best way to destroy him with someone who apparently had the resources to do it. I want him gone, she said finally. I want him out of our lives. I want him to never be able to hurt us again. She met Damien's eyes. But I don't want to become like him. You won't. Damien set his cup down. You're nothing like him. How do you know? Because you asked for your mother to be saved before yourself. He picked up his phone again. That's not something Martin Whitmore would do. Elena watched as he made a call, his voice low and businesslike as he spoke to someone on the other end. She caught fragments, extraction, timeline, minimal exposure, and realized he was setting things in motion right now, without hesitation, without needing to think about it. When he hung up, he turned back to her. It's done. My people will have your mother out of that house by tonight. Just like that? Just like that. And Martin will come home to find her gone, along with any evidence she was ever there. Damien leaned against the counter. By the time he figures out what happened, she'll be somewhere he can't touch her. He'll know I had something to do with it. Let him know. Damien's smile was sharp. Let him come looking for you. I'd love to have a conversation with him. Elena shivered. There was something in Damien's voice, something cold and predatory, that made her believe he meant it, that he'd welcome the confrontation, that Martin Whitmore, for all his cruelty and control, would be stepping into a fight he couldn't win. What happens after? She asked. After my mother's safe and Martin's neutralized and everything's done? That's up to you. Damien straightened. You can stay here as long as you want. You can go somewhere else. You can do whatever you need to rebuild your life. He paused. But you're not going back to that house. And you're not going to spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that it could really be that simple, but nothing in her life had ever been simple. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Damien was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more honest. Because I know what it's like to be powerless. And I know what it's like to finally have power and not use it to help the people who need it. He met her eyes. You needed help. I can give it. That's all there is to it. Elena didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the idea that someone, a stranger no less, would upend his entire day, use his resources, risk his safety just to help her. So she just nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Damien said. Wait until it's done. Her mother arrived that night. Elena heard the commotion in the hallway, Damien's voice, low and reassuring, and another voice, higher, trembling, familiar, and she was out of the guest room and running before she could think about it. Mom. Catherine Whitmore looked like she'd aged 10 years in the 3 years since she'd married Martin. Her hair was streaked with gray. Her face was drawn. Her hand shook as she reached for Elena. Baby, she whispered. Oh, baby, you're alive. They collided in the hallway, Elena's arms wrapping around her mother's too thin frame, and for a moment they just held each other and cried. I thought he killed you, Catherine sobbed. When you didn't come back, when I couldn't find you. I'm okay. I'm safe. Elena pulled back, searching her mother's face. Are you hurt? Did he... I'm fine. He didn't touch me. He was too busy raging about you being gone. Catherine's hands cupped Elena's face. Where have you been? What happened? Elena glanced at Damien, who was standing a respectful distance away, watching. It's a long story. She brought her mother into the living room and explained everything. The snow, Damien finding her, the penthouse, the plan to get Catherine out. Catherine listened with wide eyes, occasionally glancing at Damien like she couldn't quite believe he was real. "You did all this?" she asked him when Elena finished. "For us?" "Yes," Damien said simply. "Why?" "Because your daughter needed help." Catherine's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to." Damien stood. "You're both safe here. That's all that matters." He left them alone after that, retreating to his study to give them space. Elena and her mother sat on the couch, hands clasped, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. "This place is incredible," Catherine said, looking around. "He must be very wealthy." "I think he is." "And he just picked you up off the street?" "Yeah." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "Elena, sweetheart, you need to be careful. Men like that, men with money and power, they don't do things for free. There's always a price." "I know." Elena had thought the same thing. "But so far he hasn't asked for anything. So far." "Mom, I'm just saying, be careful." Catherine squeezed her hand. "I don't want you trading one prison for another." Elena wanted to argue, to defend Damien, to explain that he wasn't like Martin, but she didn't know that for sure. She didn't know anything about him except that he'd saved her life and seemed willing to destroy her stepfather without blinking. "I'll be careful," she promised. They talked late into the night about Martin, about the years of fear and control, about how Catherine had wanted to leave but couldn't figure out how, about how grateful she was that Elena had survived, about how terrified she was of what came next. Finally, Elena showed her mother to another guest room and left her to sleep. Then she went looking for Damien. She found him in his study, sitting behind a massive desk with a glass of whiskey and a file folder spread out in front of him. "What's that?" Elena asked from the doorway. Damien looked up. "Everything I could find on Martin Whitmore in the last 12 hours. "And?" "He's worse than I thought." Damien gestured to the folder. "Tax evasion, fraud, bribery, assault charges that got buried. And that's just what I found with a few phone calls." He leaned back. "Your stepfather's been operating with impunity for a long time, but that ends now." Elena stepped into the room. "What are you going to do?" "Expose him. Every crime, every shady deal, every skeleton in his closet." Damien's eyes were hard. "By the time I'm done, he won't have a business, a reputation, or a future." "That could take months. Weeks, if I'm efficient." He studied her. "Why? Do you want it done faster?" "I want him gone." Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "I want to know he can never hurt us again." "He won't." Damien stood and walked around the desk. "I promise you that." He was close now, close enough that Elena could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. Close enough that she should have felt threatened. She didn't. "Why do I trust you?" she asked quietly. "I don't know." Damien's voice was just as quiet. "But I'm glad you do." They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with something Elena didn't have a name for. Then Damien stepped back, breaking the spell. "You should get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow we start planning your next move." "What next move?" "Whatever you want it to be." He picked up his whiskey. "You're free now, Elena. Start thinking about what that means." Elena left the study with her heart pounding and her mind racing. Free. The word felt foreign, impossible. She'd been trapped for so long she didn't know how to be anything else. But as she climbed into the enormous bed in the guest room and pulled the covers up to her chin, she thought maybe, just maybe, she could learn. Elena woke to voices arguing in the hallway. She checked the clock, barely past 7, and dragged herself out of bed, still wearing yesterday's borrowed clothes. The voices grew clear as she approached the door, her mother's voice tight with anxiety, and Damien's, measured but firm. "You can't just keep us here like prisoners," Catherine was saying. "I'm not keeping you anywhere. You're free to leave whenever you want." "Then I want to leave. I want to go back and get my things. And I want Elena and I to find our own place." "Catherine." Damien's voice dropped lower. "If you go back to that house, he'll be waiting." Elena opened the door. Both of them turned to look at her. Mom, what's going on? Catherine's face was flushed. This man thinks he can tell us what to do. I'm trying to keep you alive, Damien said flatly. There's a difference. We can't just hide here forever. You've been here one night, and every minute I'm gone, Martin gets angrier. Catherine's hands twisted together. You don't understand what he's like when he's angry. I understand perfectly. Damien crossed his arms. Which is why you're not going anywhere near him until he's neutralized. Neutralized, Catherine repeated bitterly. You keep saying that like it means something, but men like Martin don't get neutralized. They get meaner. Elena stepped between them. Mom, please, just listen to him. I've been listening. He wants to wage some kind of war against your stepfather, and he wants us to sit here and wait while he does it. Do you know what Martin will do when he realizes we're not coming back? When he figures out someone's interfering? He already knows, Damien said. My people weren't subtle when they pulled you out. That was intentional. Catherine went pale. Intentional? You wanted him to know? I wanted him scared. Angry men make mistakes. Scared men make bigger ones. Damien's expression didn't change. Right now he's probably tearing the house apart trying to figure out who took you. He's making calls, asking questions, burning favors, and every move he makes gives me more ammunition. Ammunition for what? For destroying him. The words hung in the air like a threat. Catherine looked at Elena, then back at Damien. I don't want anyone destroyed, she said quietly. I just want to be left alone. You won't be. Not while he's still standing. Damien moved toward the kitchen. Coffee's ready if you want some. And I've got someone coming at 9 to discuss security measures. Catherine watched him go, then turned to Elena. This is insane. I know. He's talking about going after Martin like it's some kind of business deal. Maybe to him it is. Elena. Catherine gripped her daughter's arms. We need to leave, today, before this gets any worse. And go where? Elena pulled away gently. We have nothing. No money, no place to stay. We'll figure it out. How? Martin made sure you had no job, no credit, no way to survive without him. That was the whole point. Elena's voice cracked. He made us dependent so we'd never leave. And now that we're out, you want to throw that away and go back to hiding? I want to stay alive. We're safer here than we've ever been. With a stranger who's planning something we don't understand? Catherine shook her head. That's not safety. That's a different kind of cage. Elena wanted to argue, but her mother's words hit too close to something she'd been trying not to think about. Damien had been nothing but helpful, nothing but kind, but Catherine was right. They didn't know him, didn't know what he really wanted, didn't know what price they'd eventually be asked to pay. Just give it a few days, Elena said finally. Let him do what he's doing. If it works, we're free. If it doesn't, we'll leave. Catherine looked like she wanted to fight more, but exhaustion won. A few days, that's all. They joined Damien in the kitchen. He'd made breakfast, eggs, toast, fresh fruit arranged on expensive plates, and was scrolling through his phone with a cup of coffee in his other hand. Your mother thinks I'm holding you hostage, he said without looking up. I didn't say that, Catherine protested. You implied it. He set the phone down. For the record, the door's not locked. You can walk out any time, but I'd prefer you didn't, because the second you leave this building, you're exposed. To what? Martin doesn't even know where we are. He will. He's got connections, same as me. It'll take him time to track you down, but he'll do it. Damien met Catherine's eyes. And when he does, he won't be interested in talking. Elena watched her mother's face cycle through fear and defiance before settling on resignation. Catherine had spent 3 years learning to recognize real threats, and whatever else she thought about Damien, she believed him about this. Fine, Catherine said. We'll stay. For now. They ate in tense silence. Elena pushed eggs around her plate and tried to figure out how her life had become this, hiding in a penthouse with a man who talked about destroying people like he was discussing stock trades, while her stepfather prowled somewhere in the city looking for them. The doorbell rang at exactly 9. Damien answered it and returned with a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and efficient, carrying a tablet. This is Rita, Damien said, head of my security team. She's going to walk you through the protocols. Rita nodded at them. Morning. This won't take long. I just need to establish some ground rules while you're staying here. She launched into a presentation about cameras, panic buttons, secure communications, and exit strategies. Elena tried to pay attention, but her mind kept drifting. This was real. This was happening. She was living under armed guard because her stepfather was dangerous enough to warrant it. Questions? Rita asked when she finished. What if we want to leave? Catherine asked. Just for a walk or something? You'll need an escort. One of my people will accompany you. So we are prisoners. You're protected. Rita's voice was patient but firm. There's a difference. You can move around, go places, live your life. But not alone. Not until the threat's neutralized. That word again. Neutralized. Like Martin was a bomb that needed defusing. Rita left after making them download some kind of secure messaging app and testing the panic buttons hidden in various rooms. When she was gone, Catherine disappeared into her room without a word. Elena stayed in the kitchen with Damien. She hates this, Elena said. I know. She thinks you're controlling us. I know that too. Damien refilled his coffee. But I'm not going to apologize for keeping you safe. She's scared of you. She should be scared of him. She is. She's just also scared of you. Elena leaned against the counter. You have to understand, we've spent 3 years with a man who controlled everything. The money, the house, where we could go, who we could talk to. And now here we are with someone else making decisions for us. I'm not making decisions for you. I'm offering protection while you figure out what you want. But you are making decisions about Martin, about security, about what happens next. We don't get a say in any of it. Damien was quiet for a moment. What do you want to say? The question caught her off guard. What? About Martin, about what happens to him. What do you want? Elena opened her mouth, then closed it. What did she want? Justice? Revenge? For him to disappear? For him to suffer the way he'd made them suffer? I don't know, she admitted. Then let me handle it until you do. Damien set his cup down. I'm not trying to control you, Elena. I'm trying to give you time to breathe without looking over your shoulder. And then what? When Martin's neutralized and the threat's gone, what happens to us? Whatever you want. He looked at her directly. I meant what I said. You're free to go any time. Build a life somewhere else. I'll help with that too if you want. Money, connections, whatever you need to start over. Why would you do that? Because you deserve it. It was such a simple answer, such an impossible one. Elena had spent so long believing she didn't deserve anything, not safety, not kindness, not a future, that hearing someone say otherwise felt like a lie. You don't even know me, she said. I know enough. You know what you saw in one night. You don't know who I am or what I've done or whether I'm worth all this trouble. You're worth it. How can you possibly know that? Damien moved closer, not threatening, just present. Because you were dying in the snow, and your first thought when you woke up was about your mother. Because you're standing here arguing with me instead of just accepting everything I offer. Because you haven't asked for anything except for someone else to be saved first. He paused. That tells me everything I need to know. Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that this wasn't some elaborate game, that he didn't have an agenda, that he was exactly what he appeared to be, someone with the means and will to help. But she'd trusted before. She'd trusted her mother's judgment when Catherine married Martin. She'd trusted that the police would help when she called them. She'd trusted that things would get better if she just kept her head down and survived. She'd been wrong every time. I need air, she said abruptly. Damien pulled out his phone. I'll call Rita. No, I just need to stand on the balcony for a minute, alone. When he hesitated, she added, please. He nodded and pointed toward the living room. Through there. Don't go past the railing. The balcony was cold but beautiful, overlooking the city from what had to be 30 floors up. Elena gripped the railing and breathed deep, trying to settle the panic rising in her chest. This was too much. All of it. The penthouse, the security, Damien's casual promises to destroy a man who'd made their lives hell for 3 years. It felt unreal, like she'd wake up any second back in her tiny bedroom in Martin's house, with bruises forming and nowhere to go. But the railing under her hands was solid. The wind was real. The city stretched out below, indifferent to her crisis. She stayed there until the cold bit through her sweater and her fingers went numb. When she came back inside, Damien was on the phone, speaking in low tones to someone about accounts and transfers and legal exposure. He glanced at her, held up one finger, just a minute, and finished the call. "Better?" he asked. "Not really. Want to talk about it?" "Not really." He almost smiled. "Fair enough." They spent the rest of the morning in careful silence. Catherine emerged eventually, looking tired but calmer, and the three of them navigated around each other like strangers forced to share too close quarters. Which, Elena supposed, they were. Around noon, Damien's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his expression shifted into something harder. "I need to take this," he said, and disappeared into his study. Elena and Catherine exchanged looks. "Something's happening," Catherine said. "Yeah." They waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Damien emerged, his face unreadable. "Martin's made his move," he said. Elena's stomach dropped. "What kind of move?" "He filed a missing persons report this morning. Told the police you're mentally unstable and he's concerned for your safety." Damien's jaw tightened. He's also claiming Catherine's suffering from some kind of breakdown and needs medical intervention. "That's a lie?" Catherine said immediately. "I know, but it gives him cover to look for you, and it makes anyone who helps you look like they're interfering with a welfare check." "So what do we do?" Elena asked. "We beat him to it." Damien pulled up something on his phone. "I've got a lawyer drafting a restraining order right now. We'll file it this afternoon along with a statement detailing the abuse, photos of your injuries, medical records if you have them, testimony from anyone who witnessed what he did." "I don't have photos," Elena said. "He was always careful. No marks where anyone could see." "But your mother does. The hospital visit 2 years ago, the broken wrist. You said it was an accident." Catherine's face went white. "How do you know about that?" "I had someone pull your medical records. The x-rays show a spiral fracture consistent with twisting force, not a fall." Damien's voice was gentle despite the implications. "We can use that." "You had no right. I had every right to gather evidence against the man trying to kill you." He held her gaze. "I'm sorry for invading your privacy, but I'm not sorry for doing what needs to be done." Catherine looked like she might argue, but something in Damien's expression stopped her. Maybe she saw the same thing Elena was seeing, absolute conviction. Damien wasn't asking permission. He was informing them of what was already in motion. "Fine," Catherine said finally. "Use whatever you need. I'll need you to make a statement, both of you. Everything he did, every threat, every time he hurt you or made you afraid." Damien's expression softened slightly. "I know it's not easy, but it's necessary." They spent the afternoon with Damien's lawyer, a sleek woman named Miranda, who asked questions in a calm, clinical voice that somehow made the horror of answering them bearable. Elena talked about the first time Martin hit her mother, about the night he locked her in the basement for talking back, about the bruises, the threats, the systematic isolation that cut them off from anyone who might help. Catherine cried through most of her statement. Elena stayed dry-eyed and factual, disconnected from her own words like she was describing something that happened to someone else. When it was done, Miranda closed her laptop. "This is strong, very strong. I'll have the restraining order filed within the hour." "How long until it's active?" Damien asked. "Emergency order should be granted by tonight. Full hearing in 2 weeks." Miranda stood. "In the meantime, if he tries to contact either of you, document everything. Messages, calls, anything." She left. Elena felt hollowed out, like the act of speaking everything aloud had carved something essential out of her chest. "You did well," Damien said quietly. "I don't feel like I did well. I feel like I just signed our death warrant." "You signed his." He moved to the window. "By tomorrow morning, Martin Whitmore will have a restraining order against him and a paper trail of abuse that'll follow him for the rest of his life. His reputation is about to take a hit it won't recover from. You don't know that. I do. He turned back. I've seen this before. Men like him rely on silence, on victims being too scared to speak up. You just spoke up, loudly, and now everyone's going to hear it. Elena wanted to believe him, but she'd seen Martin talk his way out of things before. Seen him smile and charm and convince people that he was the victim, that she and her mother were the problem. He won't go down easy, she said. I'm counting on it. Damien's smile was sharp. The harder he fights, the more he'll expose himself. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in the guest room bed and stared at the ceiling, replaying every word of her statement, every detail she'd given Miranda. Had she said enough? Too much? Would anyone believe them? Around 2 a.m, she gave up and went to the kitchen for water. Damien was already there, standing at the window with a glass of whiskey. Can't sleep either? She asked. Don't usually sleep much. He glanced at her. You okay? No? There was no point lying. I keep thinking about what happens when he reads that restraining order, when he sees what we said about him. He'll be angry. That's what I'm afraid of. Damien set his glass down. Elena, look at me. When she did, his expression was intense. He can't touch you. Not here, not anywhere I have reach. And that's most of the city. You can't watch us every second. No, but I can make sure that anyone who tries to get to you regrets it. There was something in his voice, something cold and certain, that made Elena believe him. She'd seen glimpses of it before, that hardness underneath the careful courtesy, but now it was right at the surface. Who are you really? She asked. Not just a businessman. People don't have this kind of power, this kind of reach just from owning properties. Damien was quiet for a long moment. You want the truth? Yes. I run an organization. We deal in information, influence, and occasionally force. We operate in spaces where the law is too slow or too corrupt to be effective. We solve problems that can't be solved through normal channels. He met her eyes. Some people call it a criminal enterprise. I call it pragmatic. Elena should have been horrified, should have been planning her exit, should have been grabbing her mother and running as far and fast as they could. Instead, she felt something like relief. So you're actually dangerous, she said. Very. And Martin has no idea what he's walking into. No idea at all. Damien picked up his whiskey again. He thinks he's dealing with some boyfriend you ran to. Maybe a lawyer you hired. He doesn't know what I am or what I'm capable of. Will you kill him? The question hung between them. Damien didn't flinch. If I have to, he said finally. If he becomes a threat that can't be contained any other way. But I'd prefer not to. Dead men become martyrs. Destroyed men become examples. Examples of what? What happens when you hurt people I've decided to protect? Elena's breath caught. Is that what we are? People you've decided to protect? Yes. Why? I told you. No. She moved closer. I want the real reason, not the noble version you keep giving me. The actual truth about why you stopped that night and why you're doing all of this. Damien studied her for a long moment. Then he set his glass down and leaned against the counter, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. I had a sister, he said quietly, younger than me. And when I was 19 and she was 16, she got involved with a man who seemed great at first. Charming, successful. All the things my mother wanted for her. Elena's stomach sank. What happened? What always happens with men like that? He isolated her, controlled her, hurt her when she didn't comply. And by the time we realized what was happening, she was in too deep to leave. His jaw tightened. I tried to get her out, offered her money, a place to stay, protection. She said she'd handle it herself, that she didn't need my help. And one night he beat her bad enough that she ended up in the hospital. She told the doctor she fell down the stairs. They didn't believe her, but they couldn't prove anything, and she wouldn't testify against him. Damien's voice went flat. 2 weeks later, she was dead. Overdose. Official ruling was accidental, but I knew better. She'd given up. Decided death was easier than fighting. Elena felt tears burning in her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand. He looked at her directly. When I saw you in the snow that night, freezing, abandoned, alone, I saw her. And I decided I wasn't going to drive past this time. I wasn't going to let someone else's sister die because I didn't do enough. So this is about her, about what you couldn't save. Yes. He didn't apologize for it. Maybe that's selfish. Maybe I'm using you to fix something I can't actually fix. But it doesn't change the fact that you need help, and I can provide it. Elena didn't know what to say. The raw honesty of it, the admission that his motives weren't entirely pure, should have made her trust him less. Instead, it made him feel real for the first time. Not some untouchable benefactor, but a person carrying his own damage, trying to make it mean something. Thank you, she said finally, for telling me. Does it change anything? No. She meant it. You're still helping us. Whatever your reasons, that's still true. Damien nodded slowly. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Why? Because Martin's going to get served with the restraining order, and he's going to lose his mind. Damien's expression went cold again. And when he does, I want to be ready. Elena went back to bed but still didn't sleep. She lay there thinking about Damien's sister, about Catherine, about all the women who got trapped in cycles they couldn't escape, about how she'd almost become another statistic, another body found too late. But she hadn't. She'd survived. And now she had someone with the resources and ruthlessness to make sure she stayed that way. That should have scared her more than it did. Morning came with chaos. Elena woke to raised voices and stumbled out to find Catherine standing in the living room, phone in hand, face pale. He's calling, she said. Martin, he's calling, and I don't know what to do. Damien appeared from somewhere, already dressed. Don't answer. Let it go to voicemail. He's left 6 messages already. Good. We'll document all of them. He held out his hand. Let me see. Catherine handed over the phone with shaking hands. Damien scrolled through the call log, then put it on speaker and played the most recent voicemail. Martin's voice filled the room, tight with barely controlled rage. Catherine, pick up the phone. I know you can hear this. Whatever lies that girl has told you, whatever poison she's put in your head, you need to come home right now. We can fix this. We can work through it, but you need to come home. A pause, then his voice dropped lower, more dangerous. If you don't come back, I will find you. And when I do, you're going to regret running, both of you. The message ended. Elena felt ice in her veins. That's a violation of the restraining order, Damien said calmly. I'll forward this to Miranda. He sounds angry, Catherine whispered. He sounds scared. Damien deleted the message. He's losing control, and he knows it. That makes him dangerous, but it also makes him sloppy. The phone rang again. Martin's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer, Damien repeated. Let him dig his own grave. They listened as the phone rang and rang, then went to voicemail. Another message, this one even angrier. Accusations, threats, demands that Catherine call him back immediately, or else. Or else what? Elena asked quietly. Damien's expression was grim. Nothing, because he's not going to get the chance. The calls kept coming. 17 in total before noon, each one angrier than the last. Damien forwarded every voicemail to Miranda, building a case that grew stronger with each threat Martin left behind. But Catherine was unraveling. He's going to find us, she said for the 5th time, pacing the living room with her arms wrapped tight around herself. He always finds a way. Not this time, Elena said, but even she heard the doubt in her own voice. Damien was on the phone in his study, door closed, voice low and intense. Elena could see him through the glass, gesturing sharply at someone on the other end. Whatever he was planning, it was happening fast. The door opened. Damien emerged looking focused in a way that made Elena's pulse quicken. It's done, he said. What's done? Catherine stopped pacing. I just bought out Martin's biggest investor. The development project he's been working on for the last 2 years, the one that's been eating most of his capital, it's mine now. Elena stared at him. You bought it? Just like that? I made an offer they couldn't refuse. As of 20 minutes ago, Martin Whitmore no longer has the funding to complete his flagship property. He's got contractors waiting for payment, permits about to expire, and a half-finished building he can't afford to finish. How much did that cost you? Elena asked. It doesn't matter. Damien moved to the window. What matters is that by tomorrow morning, he's going to be drowning in financial problems that'll make finding you seem like a secondary concern. You're destroying his business, Catherine said slowly. I'm removing his resources. There's a difference. Damien turned back. A man with money has options. He can hire people to find you, pay off officials, make problems disappear. A man facing bankruptcy has to focus on survival. And while he's scrambling to save himself, we move forward. Move forward how? Elena asked. Phase 2. I've got people digging into his financials, his business dealings, every shady corner of his empire. By the time we're done, he won't just be broke. He'll be exposed. Every law he's broken, every corner he's cut, every bribe he's paid, all of it documented and ready to hand over to the authorities. Catherine sank onto the couch. You're going to get him arrested. I'm going to make sure he faces consequences. Finally. Damien's voice was calm, but Elena could hear the steel underneath. He's been operating with impunity for too long. That ends now. And if he comes after us before then? Catherine's hands twisted in her lap. If he shows up here or finds out where we are, he won't get close. I've got people watching his house, his office, everywhere he goes. If he moves in your direction, I'll know before he takes 3 steps. Elena wanted to feel reassured, but she'd spent 3 years watching Martin evade consequences, watching him smile his way out of trouble, watching him convince everyone that he was the victim and they were the problem. The idea that Damien could just destroy him with money and influence felt too easy. You don't believe me, Damien said, reading her expression. I don't know what to believe. Elena stood. You're talking about taking down a man who's spent years building protection around himself, who has lawyers and connections and enough money to make problems disappear. You really think you can just buy your way through all that? I don't think, I know. He pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. It was an email from someone named Marcus, time-stamped 10 minutes ago. Elena scanned it quickly. Something about accounts, frozen assets, pending investigations. What is this? She asked. Proof that I'm not just talking. Damien pocketed the phone. Martin's been hiding money in offshore accounts for years. Tax evasion, fraud, money laundering. I've got evidence of all of it. And as of this morning, the IRS has an anonymous tip with enough documentation to start a full audit. Catherine made a small sound. The IRS? They don't care who you know or how charming you are. They care about money and whether you've been honest about it. Martin hasn't. Damien's smile was sharp. He's about to have a very bad year. Elena felt something shift inside her. Not quite hope, but something adjacent to it. For the first time since this started, Martin's destruction felt possible. Real. Not just a fantasy she'd nursed during the worst nights, but an actual outcome that might happen. How long? She asked. Until he's finished? Depends on how hard he fights. Could be weeks, could be months. Damien met her eyes. But it'll happen. I promise you that. The rest of the day passed in tense waiting. Martin called 6 more times, left 3 more voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. Elena listened to one where he actually cried, begging Catherine to come home, saying he couldn't live without her, that he'd change, that things would be different. He sounds pathetic, Elena said. He sounds cornered. Damien deleted the message, which is exactly where I want him. That night, Elena dreamed about snow, about lying in the street, about the cold eating into her bones, about Martin's face in the window watching her die with satisfaction. She woke gasping, heart racing, sheets tangled around her legs. The clock read 3 a.m. She lay there trying to calm down, but sleep felt impossible. Finally, she gave up and went to the kitchen. Damien was there again, same spot by the window, same glass of whiskey. He looked up when she entered. Bad dreams? He asked. How did you know? You have the look. He gestured to the cabinet. There's tea if you want something warm. Elena made herself chamomile and joined him by the window. The city was quieter at this hour. Fewer lights, less movement. Almost peaceful. "Does it get easier?" she asked. "The nightmares?" "Eventually. Or you learn to live with them." Damien took a sip. "My sister used to have them. Even after she left him the first time, she'd wake up screaming. Did they ever stop?" "I don't know. She didn't live long enough for me to find out." The words hung heavy between them. Elena wanted to say something comforting, but what was there to say? His sister was dead. Martin had almost killed her. No amount of pretty words could change those facts. "I keep thinking about what happens after," Elena said instead. "When Martin's destroyed and we're safe and all of this is over, what do we do then?" "Whatever you want." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Damien turned to face her. "I can give you safety, resources, a fresh start, but I can't tell you what to do with it. That's your choice." "What if I don't know how to choose? What if I've spent so long surviving that I don't remember how to actually live?" "Then you learn." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You try things. You fail at some of them. You figure out what you want and what you don't. That's what everyone does. Everyone didn't spend 3 years in a prison disguised as a house. No, but everyone's got their own kind of prison. Yours was just more obvious. Well, Damien set his glass down. "You're not broken, Elena. You're not ruined. You're just someone who survived something terrible, and now you get to decide what comes next." Elena wanted to believe him, but the weight of those years, the constant fear and vigilance and suppression of anything that might provoke Martin's rage, felt like it had fundamentally changed something inside her. Like she'd lost the part of herself that knew how to want things, how to dream beyond just making it to tomorrow. "What if I can't?" she asked quietly. "Can't what?" "Decide. Move forward. Be normal. Then you'll figure that out too." He moved closer. "There's no timeline on this, Elena. No deadline for when you're supposed to have your life together. You survived. That's enough for now." Something in his voice, the gentleness, the certainty, made Elena's throat tighten. She'd spent so long being told she wasn't enough, wasn't grateful enough, wasn't quiet enough, wasn't anything enough. Hearing someone say survival was sufficient felt revolutionary. "Thank you," she managed. "For what? For not expecting me to be fine." Damien's expression softened. "You don't have to be fine. You just have to be here." They stood there for a moment, the silence comfortable now instead of tense. Then Elena finished her tea and went back to bed, and this time when she closed her eyes, the nightmares stayed away. Morning brought news. Miranda called at 8 with an update that had Damien's expression shifting from neutral to satisfied in seconds. "The restraining order's been granted," he said after hanging up. "Martin's been officially served. He's not allowed within 500 feet of either of you. Can't call, can't text, can't make any kind of contact." "Will he follow it?" Catherine asked. "Doesn't matter if he will. What matters is we'll know if he doesn't." Damien pulled up something on his phone. "I've also got confirmation that the IRS has opened an investigation. They move faster than I expected." "How fast?" Elena asked. "They executed a search warrant on his office this morning. Seized his computers, his files, everything." Damien showed her the news alert on his screen. Local developer Martin Whitmore under investigation for tax fraud. "It's already public." Elena read the article twice, hardly believing the words. Martin's face stared out from the photo, that same confident smile he used when he wanted people to trust him. But now it looked different, desperate, fake. "He's going to know you did this," Catherine said. "I'm counting on it." Damien pocketed his phone. "Let him know. Let him realize he picked a fight with someone who fights back." "You're enjoying this," Elena said. It wasn't quite an accusation. "I'm enjoying watching a predator get what he deserves." Yes, Damien didn't apologize for it. He spent years hurting people who couldn't fight back. Now he's up against someone who can. That's justice. Justice would be him in jail. He will be. This is just the beginning. Damien moved toward his study. "I've got calls to make. Stay inside today. I don't want either of you visible until we know how Martin's going to react." He disappeared behind the glass door. Elena and Catherine were left alone in the too big living room, watching the city wake up through windows that felt like a barrier between them and the rest of the world. "This is really happening," Catherine said softly. "Yeah." "He's actually being held accountable." "Yeah." "I never thought I'd see it." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "All those years, all that suffering, and I thought he'd just keep getting away with it forever." Elena reached for her mother's hand. "He's not getting away with anything anymore." They sat together on the couch, watching the news cycle through stories about Martin's investigation. Tax fraud, possible money laundering, allegations of financial misconduct dating back years. Each headline felt like vindication, like proof that they hadn't been crazy to be afraid, hadn't been weak for not fighting back sooner. By noon, Martin's lawyer had released a statement denying all charges and calling the investigation a political witch hunt. By 2, another article appeared detailing complaints from contractors who claimed Martin had cheated them out of payment. By 4, someone had leaked documents showing he'd bribed a city inspector to overlook code violations. The empire was crumbling in real time. Damien emerged from his study around 5, looking tired but satisfied. "It's working better than I hoped. Every outlet in the city's running stories about him. His reputation's destroyed." "Good," Elena said and meant it. "There's something else." Damien's expression shifted. "He tried to access his accounts this afternoon. Found out they've been frozen pending the investigation. He's officially broke as of 3 hours ago." "All of his money?" Catherine asked. "Everything I could find. There might be some hidden somewhere, but not enough to matter. He can't pay his lawyers, can't make bail if charges are filed, can't do anything except watch his life fall apart." Elena felt a fierce satisfaction burn through her. This was what she'd wanted, not just freedom, but consequences. Martin facing the reality of what he'd done without any escape route, without any way to charm or buy or threaten his way out of it. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we wait for the criminal charges. The evidence I provided should be enough for the DA to move forward. Could take a few weeks, but it'll happen." Damien leaned against the wall. In the meantime, he's powerless, broke, isolated, and under investigation. He can't touch you. "You sound certain." "I am certain." He met her eyes. "This is over, Elena. You won. You both did." Catherine started crying again, but this time they were different tears. Relief instead of fear, hope instead of despair. Elena felt her own eyes burning, but blinked it back, not ready to let go yet, not ready to believe it was really finished. That night, Martin called one last time. The phone rang at 11, his name flashing on the screen. Damien put it on speaker. "Catherine. Elena." Martin's voice was ragged, defeated. "I know you're listening. I know you're together. And I know you think you've won." No one answered. "I made mistakes. I know that. I was too harsh sometimes, too controlling, but everything I did because I cared, because I wanted what was best for this family." He paused. "I'm sorry for all of it. If you just come home, we can fix this. We can start over, please." The desperation in his voice was almost convincing. Almost. Elena had heard this before, the apologies, the promises, the claims that things would change. They never did. "Please," Martin said again, "don't do this. Don't destroy me. I'm begging you." The line went quiet, then softer. "I have nothing left. You took everything from me. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" Elena reached for the phone. Damien started to stop her, but she shook her head and answered. "Yes," she said clearly. "God, this is exactly what I wanted." She heard Martin's sharp intake of breath. "You destroyed my life," she continued. "You terrorized us for 3 years. You made every day a nightmare, and you never once apologized for any of it. Not really. Not until you were the one losing everything." Her voice was steady, cold. "So yes, I'm happy. I'm happy you're broke. I'm happy you're being investigated. I'm happy you're finally facing consequences for what you've done." "Elena, I'm not finished." She gripped the phone tighter. You threw me out in the snow to die. You threatened my mother. You controlled every aspect of our lives because it made you feel powerful. Well, you're not powerful anymore. You're nothing, and that's exactly what you deserve." Silence on the other end. Then Martin's voice, harder now, the desperation replaced by rage. "You're going to regret this, both of you. You think you're safe with whoever's protecting you, but you're not. I will find you, and when I do—" Damien took the phone from Elena. "Make one move toward them, and it'll be the last thing you do. I've destroyed your finances and your reputation. Don't make me destroy the rest." He hung up before Martin could respond. "That was stupid," he said to Elena, but there was no heat in it. "You just provoked him." "I don't care." Elena's hands were shaking. "I needed him to know. Needed him to understand that we're not afraid anymore. You should be afraid. Cornered men do desperate things. Let him do desperate things. You said yourself he's powerless. Powerless isn't the same as harmless." Damien set the phone down. "I'm doubling security tonight. No one comes near this building without me knowing about it." Catherine looked pale. "You think he'll try something?" "I think he's got nothing left to lose, which makes him dangerous." Damien pulled out his phone and started typing. "Rita's putting extra people on the entrances. We'll be fine." But Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw had tightened. He was worried, maybe not scared, but definitely concerned about what Martin might do now that he'd been pushed completely over the edge. "I shouldn't have answered," Elena said quietly. "No, you shouldn't have." Damien looked up. "But I understand why you did." "Do you?" "Yeah, you needed him to know he lost. I get that." He moved toward the window. "Just don't do it again. Next time, let me handle it." Elena nodded, but she knew there wouldn't be a next time. She'd said what she needed to say. The rest was just cleanup. They spent the evening in tense silence, waiting for something that didn't come. No calls, no threats, no sign of Martin trying to circumvent the restraining order. By midnight, when nothing had happened, Damien finally relaxed slightly. "Maybe he's smarter than I thought," he said. "Or maybe he's planning something," Catherine countered. "If he is, we'll handle it." Damien stood. "Get some sleep, both of you. Tomorrow we meet with the DA to hand over the evidence formally." Elena tried to sleep but couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Martin had sounded too defeated, too broken. And the Martin she knew didn't break. He bent people until they broke instead. Around 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Against every instinct, she opened it. The message was simple. "You should have stayed in the snow." Her blood went cold. She was out of bed and running before she could think, phone clutched in her hand, yelling for Damien. He met her in the hallway, already moving, already alert. "What happened?" She showed him the text. His expression went from concerned to furious in seconds. "Rita," he barked into his phone. "I need a trace on a number, now." Elena stood there shaking while Damien paced, firing off orders to whoever was on the other end. Catherine appeared, hair disheveled, eyes wide. "What's going on?" "Martin made contact," Elena said. "He knows my number." "He always knew your number," Damien said, still on the phone. "What matters is he violated the restraining order. That's a criminal offense." He listened for a moment. "Burner phone, figures. Can you track the location it was purchased?" A pause. "Do it." He hung up and turned to them. "It's okay. He's just trying to scare you." "It's working," Elena admitted. "I know, but he's also making mistakes. That text is evidence. I'm forwarding it to Miranda and the police right now." His phone was already out, fingers flying across the screen. "By morning, he'll have officers looking for him on harassment charges on top of everything else." "What if he shows up here?" Catherine asked. "He won't make it past the lobby. And if he tries, Rita's people have authorization to remove him by any means necessary." Damien's voice was hard. "He's not getting anywhere near you." But Elena couldn't shake the dread pooling in her stomach. That text felt like a promise. Like Martin had decided that if he was going down, he was taking them with him. "I want to leave," she said suddenly. "I want to go somewhere he can't find us." "You're already somewhere he can't find you." "No, I mean really leave. Leave the city. Go somewhere far away and start over." "Running won't solve anything," Damien said. Neither will stay in here waiting for him to make his move. They stared at each other. Elena could see him calculating, weighing options, trying to figure out how to keep her safe while also keeping her close. "If you really want to leave, I'll arrange it," he said finally. "But give me 48 hours to finish what I started. Once the DA files charges, Martin will be in custody. You'll be safe. And if he does something before then, he won't get the chance." Damien stepped closer. "Trust me, Elena. I know this feels scary, but I've got this under control." Elena wanted to trust him, but control was an illusion. She'd learned that the hard way. No matter how careful you were, how much you planned, how many precautions you took, chaos always found a way in. "Okay," she said anyway. 48 hours. 48 hours, Damien agreed. Neither of them knew that Martin was already moving, that he'd spent the last 6 hours draining a hidden account Damien hadn't found, buying a gun from someone who didn't ask questions, and planning one final act of revenge against the people who'd destroyed his life. Neither of them knew that in 48 hours, everything would come apart in ways they couldn't predict or prevent. All they knew was that dawn was coming, and with it, the next phase of a war that was far from over. Dawn came with sirens. Elena jolted awake to the sound of them, distant at first, then closer, then right outside the building. She grabbed her robe and ran to the living room where Damien was already at the window, phone pressed to his ear. "What's happening?" "Bokum," she asked. He held up one finger. "Wait," and kept listening. His jaw tightened. "When? How did he get that close?" Elena's stomach dropped. "Is it Martin?" Damien ended the call. "He tried to get into the building 20 minutes ago. Claimed he was here to see a tenant on the 15th floor. Security stopped him at the desk. He got aggressive and they called the police." "Is he still down there?" "No, he ran before they arrived." Damien's expression was dark. "But he left something behind." "What?" "A note addressed to you." Elena's hands went cold. "What did it say?" "I'll let you decide if you want to read it." He pulled up a photo on his phone and handed it to her. The note was handwritten, Martin's familiar scrawl made worse by what looked like shaking hands. "Elena, you can't hide forever. I made you. I can unmake you. This isn't over until I say it's over." She handed the phone back, feeling sick. "He's lost his mind. He's desperate, which is what I was afraid of." Damien pocketed his phone. "The police are looking for him now. Between the restraining order violation and the threatening note, they've got cause to bring him in. And if they don't find him, they will. He's not thinking clearly anymore. People who aren't thinking clearly make mistakes." Catherine appeared from her room, face pale. "I heard sirens." "Martin was here," Elena said. "He's gone now." "Here? At this building?" Catherine's voice pitched higher. "How did he find us?" "Probably followed one of my cars or bribed someone." Damien moved toward the kitchen. "Doesn't matter. He didn't get close, and now the police have more evidence against him." "That's not good enough." Catherine wrapped her arms around herself. "You said we were safe here. You said he couldn't touch us." "And he didn't. Security stopped him exactly like they were supposed to. But he got to the building. He was right downstairs." Catherine's breathing was getting faster. "What if he comes back? What if he finds a way in?" "He won't." Damien's voice was calm but firm. "I'm moving you both to a secondary location today, somewhere he definitely doesn't know about." "You have another place?" Elena asked. "I have several. You'll go to one outside the city, fully secured, completely off the grid." He was already typing on his phone. "Give me 2 hours to arrange transport." "I don't want to leave," Catherine said suddenly. "I don't want to keep running." "You're not running. You're being strategic." "It feels like running. It feels like survival." Damien looked up. "Martin is unraveling. When men like him unravel, they do dangerous things. I'd rather you be somewhere he can't reach while we finish dealing with him." "Finish how?" Elena asked. "The DA's filing charges this afternoon. Once Martin's in custody, this ends." He met her eyes. "But until then, I need you safe, both of you." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to stay and see this through, wanted to be there when Martin finally got what he deserved. But the note's words kept echoing in her head. "I can unmake you." like she was something he'd created, something he owned, something he could destroy if he decided she wasn't worth keeping anymore. Okay, she said quietly. We'll go. Tom oasham soto. Catherine looked like she wanted to protest, but exhaustion won. Fine. Where? A house upstate, lakefront property, very private. You'll have everything you need. Damien set his phone down. Pack whatever you want to bring. We leave in 90 minutes. They packed in silence, throwing clothes and toiletries into bags that Damien provided. Elena moved mechanically, trying not to think about what it meant that they were fleeing again, that even with all of Damien's resources and protection, Martin had still gotten close enough to scare them. The house wasn't just a house. It was a compound. High walls, security cameras everywhere, guards at the gate who checked IDs and called ahead before letting Damien's car through. The building itself was modern and sprawling, all glass and steel, perched on a hill overlooking a lake that stretched out like a mirror. This is yours? Catherine asked as they pulled up. One of several properties. I use it when I need privacy. Damien got out and gestured for them to follow. There's staff on site, but they're discreet. You won't be bothered unless you want to be. Inside was just as impressive as the penthouse. Expensive furniture, original art, windows that framed the lake like a painting. But it felt different somehow. Less like a showpiece, more like a place someone actually lived. Guest rooms are upstairs, Damien said. Pick whichever ones you want. Kitchen's stocked. There's a library, a gym, a screening room if you want to watch something. He paused. And there's a panic room in the basement, just in case. Just in case of what? Elena asked. In case I'm wrong about how well we've covered our tracks. He met her eyes. I don't think Martin will find you here, but I'm not taking chances. He showed them the panic room, a reinforced space with its own air supply, communication systems, and enough supplies to last a week. It felt excessive until Elena remembered the note, the threat, the reality that Martin was out there somewhere planning something. How long do we stay here? Catherine asked when they came back upstairs. Until Martin's arrested. Could be tonight, could be a few days. Damien checked his phone. I need to get back to the city. Make sure the DA has everything they need. You're leaving? Elena heard the panic in her own voice and hated it. I'll be back by tomorrow, and Rita's here with a full team. You're protected. He moved closer, lowering his voice. I know this is scary, but you're safe here, Elena. I promise. She wanted to believe him, but promises felt meaningless when the world kept proving it could break them. Damien left an hour later. Elena and Catherine stood at the window and watched his car disappear down the long driveway, and then they were alone in this beautiful prison, waiting for news that might never come. The first day passed slowly. They explored the house, tried to watch a movie, picked at meals that the invisible staff left in the kitchen. Catherine retreated to her room early. Elena stayed up, staring at the lake, trying to silence the voice in her head that kept whispering that this was temporary, that safety was an illusion, that Martin would find a way. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. A text from Damien. D. A filed charges, warrant issued for Martin's arrest. Should have him by morning. Elena read it 3 times, waiting to feel relief. It didn't come. Instead, she felt hollowed out, like she'd been holding her breath for so long she'd forgotten how to exhale. She tried to sleep but couldn't. Every sound in the unfamiliar house made her tense. The wind against the windows. The old building settling. Footsteps that were probably just security doing rounds but sounded like someone approaching. At 3 a.m., she gave up and went downstairs. The kitchen was dark except for the moonlight coming through the massive windows. Elena made tea and stood there drinking it, watching the lake shimmer in the darkness. Can't sleep either? She spun around. Rita stood in the doorway wearing tactical gear and looking wide awake despite the hour. Sorry, Rita said. Didn't mean to startle you. Saw the light and wanted to check. Just me and my insomnia. Elena held up her mug. Want some? I'm good. On duty for another 3 hours. Rita leaned against the door frame. You doing okay? Define okay. Fair enough. Rita smiled slightly. For what it's worth, you're safe here. This place is a fortress. Nothing gets through that we don't want getting through. That's what Damien said about the penthouse. The penthouse has public access. This doesn't. There's one road in and out, and we control it. Anyone tries to approach on foot, we've got sensors in the woods. By air, we've got radar. By water, we've got cameras on the dock. Rita's voice was calm, professional. I've protected people in worse situations with fewer resources. You're going to be fine. Elena wanted to argue, but Rita's confidence was oddly reassuring. This was her job. She did this for a living, and if she said they were safe, maybe they actually were. Thank you, Elena said. Just doing what I'm paid for. Rita straightened. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow should bring good news. She left. Elena finished her tea and went back to bed, and this time exhaustion won over anxiety. She slept hard and dreamless, and when she woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows and her phone was buzzing. Damien's name flashed on the screen. She answered. They found him, he said without preamble. Police picked him up an hour ago trying to board a bus to Canada. He's in custody. Elena sat up, heart racing. He's arrested? Actually arrested? Yes, he'll be arraigned this afternoon. Judge denied bail given the flight risk and the restraining order violations. Damien's voice carried satisfaction. It's over, Elena. He's done. She should have felt triumph, relief, something other than the weird numbness spreading through her chest. Elena, you there? Yeah, I'm here. She swallowed. What happens now? He goes to trial, gets convicted, spends the next decade in prison for fraud, tax evasion, and harassment. A pause. You won. We won, she corrected. You did most of this. I provided resources. You provided the courage to use them. His voice softened. I'm coming back up tonight. We'll celebrate properly. After he hung up, Elena sat there staring at her phone, waiting for the reality to sink in. Martin was in jail. Actually, in jail. Not just threatened with it, not just under investigation, but arrested and denied bail and facing real consequences. She went to tell her mother and found Catherine already awake, sitting on her bed with tears streaming down her face. You heard? Elena asked. Damien called me too. Catherine wiped at her eyes. I can't believe it. After all this time, he's actually being held accountable. Yeah, you don't sound happy. I don't know what I sound. Elena sat next to her mother. I should be happy, right? This is what we wanted. But it doesn't feel real yet. No, it feels like any second he's going to find a loophole or pay someone off or convince a judge he's the victim and we're the villains. Elena's voice cracked. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Catherine took her hand. Maybe there is no other shoe. Maybe this is just what winning looks like, and we're not used to it. They sat together in silence. Two women who'd spent years braced for the next blow, trying to learn how to exist without that constant fear. Damien returned that evening with champagne and steaks and a smile that looked almost genuine. They ate dinner on the terrace overlooking the lake while he recounted the details of Martin's arrest, the desperation, the protests, the way he'd broken down when the cuffs went on. He cried, Damien said. Actually cried. Kept saying it wasn't fair that he'd been framed, that you'd both lied about everything. Did anyone believe him? Catherine asked. No, the evidence is too strong. His own lawyer looked disgusted. Damien refilled his glass. He'll plead out eventually, take a deal to avoid trial, but either way, he's going away for a long time. Elena pushed food around her plate. And after, when he gets out? By the time he gets out, you'll have built an entire new life. He'll be a bad memory, nothing more. Damien met her eyes. This is over. Elena, you can stop waiting for him to come back. She wanted to believe him, but the fear had lived in her bones for so long, she didn't know how to evict it. They spent the next few days at the lake house, slowly learning to relax. Catherine started taking walks around the property. Elena discovered the library and lost herself in books. Damien worked from the house, laptop open at the dining table, making calls and sending emails, and running his empire from this quiet space. It almost felt normal, domestic even, like they were just people on a vacation instead of victims hiding from a predator who'd been caged. On the fourth day, Miranda called with an update. Martin's lawyer contacted me. They want to discuss a plea deal. What kind of deal? Elena asked, phone on speaker so Damien could hear. 7 years in exchange for pleading guilty to the fraud and harassment charges. He'd also have to agree to a permanent restraining order and pay restitution for the financial damage. 7 years, Elena repeated. That's not enough. It's what we can guarantee. If we go to trial, he might get more, but he also might get less. Juries are unpredictable. Miranda's voice was pragmatic. This way, you know exactly what you're getting. He goes away, you move on. It's finished. Elena looked at Damien. What do you think? I think 7 years is a long time for a man like him. He'll come out broken. Damien leaned back. But it's your call. If you want to push for trial, we'll do that. And risk him walking? There's always that risk. Elena closed her eyes. 7 years. Martin would be in his 60s when he got out. Older, weaker, stripped of the power and money that made him dangerous. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, certain, an end instead of more fighting. Take the deal, she said. You sure, Chess? Miranda asked. I'm sure. I just want this over. Then I'll make it happen. Give me a week to finalize everything. After Miranda hung up, Elena felt something shift inside her. Not quite peace, but close. An acceptance that this was how it ended. Not with drama or confrontation, but with paperwork and lawyers and Martin signing away his freedom because he had no other choice. How do you feel? Damien asked. Tired. It was the most honest answer she had. Really, really tired. Then rest. You've earned it. That night, Elena dreamed about snow again. But this time, when she woke up freezing in the street, Damien was already there, and Martin was nowhere to be found. She woke feeling lighter than she had in years. The week passed. Miranda finalized the plea deal. Martin signed it from jail, apparently relieved to take the certainty over the gamble of trial. The judge accepted the terms. And just like that, it was done. He'll be transferred to a medium security facility upstate, Miranda said during the final call. You won't see him again unless you choose to. I won't choose to, Elena said firmly. Then this is goodbye. It's been a pleasure working with you both. Miranda paused. You're brave women. Don't forget that. After the call ended, Elena and Catherine sat together on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the lake in gold and pink. What do we do now? Catherine asked. I don't know. Anything we want, I guess. That's a lot of options. Yeah. They fell quiet. The future stretched out vast and uncertain, no longer constrained by Martin's control, but not yet filled with anything concrete. Just possibility, just space to become whoever they decided to be. Damien appeared behind them. I have something for you. He handed Elena an envelope. Inside was a check with more zeros than she'd ever seen in her life. What is this? She asked. Payment for the property I took from Martin. Legally, since you were his dependent, you're entitled to compensation. He shrugged. I'm just making sure you get it. This is too much. It's exactly right. Take it. Use it to build your new life. Elena stared at the check, then at Damien. Why are you doing all this? I told you. Not the story about your sister, the real reason. Why you care so much about what happens to us. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down across from them, and when he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more honest. Because I'm tired of watching bad men win, he said. I've spent my whole life in spaces where power means everything and morality means nothing, where people like Martin do whatever they want because they can. And I decided a long time ago that if I had power, I'd use it differently. He met Elena's eyes. You needed help. I could give it. That's all there is to it. You could have just given us money, set us up somewhere and walked away. I could have, but I wanted to do more than help you escape. I wanted to help you win. He leaned forward, and you did. You took back your life from someone who tried to steal it. That matters. Elena felt tears burning in her eyes. Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved us. No. Damien's voice was firm. You saved yourselves. I just gave you the tools. That night, Elena stood on the terrace alone, looking out at the lake. Behind her, the house glowed with warm light. Inside, her mother was laughing at something on TV. Damien was in the kitchen making coffee. Security was stationed around the property, making sure no threats approached. She was safe. Actually, truly safe. Martin was in prison. The money in her account meant she could go anywhere, do anything, become anyone. The future was wide open. But as she stood there, Elena realized something that sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. She'd spent so long fighting to survive that she didn't know how to actually live, didn't know what she wanted beyond not this, didn't know who she was outside of being Martin's victim. Freedom, she was learning, was terrifying in its own way. Elena? She turned. Damien stood in the doorway, 2 mugs in his hands. Thought you might want some, he said, offering one. She took it. They stood together at the railing, watching the lake darken as night fell. What happens now? Elena asked. With us, I mean. Do we stay here? Go back to the city? What? Whatever you want. Stop saying that. I need you to tell me what happens next. I can't. Damien's voice was gentle. You've spent 3 years with someone making every decision for you. I'm not going to do the same thing, even with good intentions. But I don't know how to decide. Then take your time. Stay here as long as you need. Leave when you're ready. There's no rush. And you? What about me? Where do you fit in all this? She turned to face him. Are you just our benefactor, our protector, or is there something else? Damien looked at her for a long moment. What do you want me to be? I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know what I want or what I feel or what any of this means. Elena's voice cracked. You saved my life. You destroyed the man who tried to kill me. You've given me everything. And I don't know if what I feel is gratitude or something more, and I don't know if it even matters because I'm so messed up I probably can't tell the difference. You're not messed up. Yes, I am. I'm damaged and broken, and I don't know how to be a person anymore. Elena. Damien set his mug down and took her shoulders gently. You are not broken. You survived something terrible. That doesn't make you damaged. It makes you strong. I don't feel strong. You will. In time. He let her go. And for the record, I'm whatever you need me to be. Friend, protector, stranger who helped once and then disappears. It's your choice. All of it. Elena wanted to say something profound, something that captured the complexity of what she felt, but she was too tired, too wrung out, too uncertain. Can I choose later? She asked quietly. Take all the time you need. They stood together in comfortable silence, and for the first time since this all started, Elena felt like maybe, just maybe, she could figure out how to be okay. The next morning brought unexpected news. Catherine came to breakfast with a strange expression on her face. I talked to my sister last night, she said, the one in Oregon. I haven't spoken to her in 3 years because Martin didn't allow it. What did she say? Elena asked. She wants me to come visit, stay as long as I want. Catherine twisted her hands together. I think I might go. You're leaving? Not leaving, just taking some time, figuring out who I am when I'm not afraid. Catherine looked at Elena. Is that okay? Mom, you don't need my permission. I know, but I need to know you'll be okay without me. Elena thought about it. A week ago, the idea of her mother leaving would have sent her into a panic. But now, with Martin in prison and safety no longer a question, it just felt like the next step. I'll be okay, she said. Go. Reconnect with your family. Live your life. Catherine hugged her tight. I love you, and I'm so proud of you. I love you too. 3 days later, Elena stood at the airport with Damien, watching her mother disappear through security. She felt a pang of something, not quite loss, but close, and then it faded. You okay? Damien asked. Yeah. She needs this. So do you. What do I need? Time, space, a chance to figure out what comes next without anyone else's expectations weighing on you. They drove back to the lake house in silence. When they arrived, Elena realized this was it, the moment where she had to decide what she actually wanted. I think I want to stay here for a while, she said. Just Exist, without plans or pressure or anything. Then stay. And you? I'll be around when you need me. Damien smiled slightly. And when you don't, I won't be. It wasn't a promise of forever. It wasn't a declaration of anything. It was just an offer of presence without obligation, and somehow that was exactly what Elena needed. That night, she stood on the terrace again, looking out at the lake. Behind her, the house was quiet. Damien was in the city handling business. Security was invisible but present, and she was alone. Not lonely, not afraid, just alone with her thoughts and the future and the slow, difficult work of becoming someone new. She thought about Martin, locked in a cell somewhere, stripped of everything that made him powerful. She thought about her mother, flying toward a fresh start. She thought about Damien and his sister and all the people who didn't survive their monsters. And she thought about herself, about the girl who'd been thrown into the snow and decided to live instead of die. That girl had been scared and powerless and desperate, but she'd also been determined, strong, capable of surviving the unsurvivable. Elena was still that girl, but she was also becoming someone else, someone who didn't just survive but thrived, someone who chose her own path instead of having it chosen for her. It would take time, it would be hard, but for the first time in 3 years, she had the space to do it. And that, Elena decided, was enough. 2 months passed like water through fingers, slow at first, then suddenly gone. Elena spent most of that time at the lake house, learning how to wake up without fear, how to make decisions without second-guessing every impulse, how to exist in her own skin without waiting for punishment. It wasn't easy. Some mornings she woke up panicking, convinced Martin had escaped, convinced this was all temporary, convinced the other shoe would drop any second. But those mornings came less frequently as the weeks went by, replaced by something that felt almost like peace. Damien visited twice a week, always calling ahead, always giving her the option to say no. They'd have dinner on the terrace, talk about nothing important, and he'd leave before it got too late. He never pushed, never asked for more than she offered, never made her feel like she owed him anything beyond honesty. "You're different," he said one evening in late spring, watching her carry dishes to the kitchen with an ease that hadn't been there before. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you're not carrying as much weight." He leaned against the counter. "It's good to see." Elena rinsed a plate, considering. "I don't wake up scared anymore. That's new." "That's progress." "Yeah." She set the plate in the rack. "My therapist says I'm doing well." "You found a therapist?" "You sound surprised." "I'm not, just glad." Damien picked up a towel and started drying. "What does she say about everything?" "That I have PTSD, which isn't exactly shocking. That I need to process the trauma instead of just surviving past it. That healing isn't linear and I shouldn't expect it to be." Elena handed him another plate. "She also says I need to start thinking about what I want my life to look like. Not what I don't want, but what I actually do want. And I don't have an answer yet." She turned off the water. "I spent 3 years wanting to escape. Now that I have, I don't know what comes next." "You'll figure it out. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true." He set the towel down. "You're 20 years old, Elena. You don't need to have everything figured out right now." "I feel like I should, though. Like I wasted so much time being trapped that I need to make up for it by having perfect clarity about my future." "That's not how it works." "I know. My therapist says that, too." Elena smiled slightly. "She says a lot of things I don't want to hear." "That's how you know she's good." They finished cleaning in comfortable silence. This had become their pattern, easy domesticity that didn't demand anything, didn't promise anything, just existed in the moment. Elena had grown to appreciate it more than she expected. "I'm thinking about going back to school," she said as they moved to the living room. "Finishing my degree. I only had a year left when everything fell apart." "What were you studying?" "Education. I wanted to be a teacher." She laughed at his expression. "I know it's not glamorous." "I didn't say that." "You were thinking it." "I was thinking it suits you." Damien settled into his usual chair. "You'd be good at it." "You don't know that." I know you're patient, empathetic, and you don't give up on things. Those are pretty essential qualities for teaching. Elena felt warmth spread through her chest. You really think I could do it? I think you can do anything you decide to do. She wanted to believe him, and maybe for the first time, she actually did. The call came 3 weeks later, just as Elena was starting to think about leaving the lake house and returning to something resembling normal life. Miranda's name flashed on her phone at 8 in the morning. I need you to come to the city, Miranda said without preamble. There's been a development. Elena's stomach dropped. What kind of development? Martin's lawyer filed a motion claiming new evidence. The judge granted a hearing for tomorrow morning. Miranda's voice was carefully neutral. I don't think it'll amount to anything, but you should be present. New evidence of what? He's claiming the plea deal was signed under duress, that he was coerced into accepting it. That's ridiculous. I know, but we still have to address it. Miranda paused. Can you be here by tomorrow? Yeah, I'll leave today. After she hung up, Elena sat there trying to process. Martin was fighting. Even from prison, even with everything stacked against him, he was still fighting. Of course he was. Men like him didn't accept defeat gracefully. She called Damien. He answered on the second ring. Miranda called you too? He asked. Yeah, what does this mean? It means Martin's desperate and grasping at straws. The judge will see through it, but she could hear the tension in his voice. I'm sending a car to pick you up in 2 hours. You'll stay at the penthouse tonight. I can get a hotel. Elena. His voice was firm. You're staying at the penthouse, non-negotiable. She wanted to argue but couldn't find the energy. Okay. Good. I'll see you tonight. The drive back to the city felt surreal. Elena watched the landscape change from rural to suburban to urban, watched the buildings grow taller and the traffic grow thicker, and felt like she was traveling backward in time. The last time she'd been here, Martin had still been free, still dangerous, still hunting them. Now he was caged, but apparently not defanged. The penthouse looked exactly the same expensive furniture, same floor-to-ceiling windows, same view of the city stretching out like a promise or a threat depending on your perspective. Elena stood at those windows and remembered the first night, how terrified she'd been, how certain that this was just trading one prison for another. She'd been wrong about that, but the fear had been real. You okay? Damien appeared behind her with 2 glasses of wine. No, but I will be. She took the glass he offered. Tell me honestly, can Martin actually get the plea deal overturned? No. He signed it willingly, his lawyer was present, everything was documented properly. Damien moved to stand beside her. This is just theater, one last attempt to claw back some control. And if the judge believes him? She won't. I've seen the motion. It's desperate and poorly argued. Martin's lawyer knows it's a waste of time, but his client's insisting. He sipped his wine. Tomorrow morning, the judge will deny the motion, reaffirm the plea deal, and Martin will go back to prison. That's all that's going to happen. Elena wanted to trust that certainty, but she'd learned the hard way that certainty was often an illusion. They had dinner, something Damien had made himself, not ordered in, and talked about everything except tomorrow's hearing. Elena told him about her therapy, about her plans to go back to school, about the books she'd been reading, and the walks she'd been taking. He told her about a new property acquisition, a difficult negotiation he'd won, the restaurant he'd discovered that she'd probably hate because it was too pretentious. It felt normal, easy, like they were just 2 people sharing a meal instead of 2 people bound together by crisis and rescue and a debt that could never fully be repaid. Can I ask you something? Elena said when they'd finished eating. Always. What happens after tomorrow? Assuming everything goes the way you think it will, assuming Martin's motion gets denied and he goes back to prison, what happens to us? Damien set his glass down carefully. What do you want to happen? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Elena. He looked at her directly. I've told you from the beginning that you don't owe me anything. That stands. If you want to leave, build a life somewhere else, never see me again, that's fine. If you want to stay in touch, be friends, whatever, that's fine too. This isn't conditional on you making any particular choice. But what do you want? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was different, less controlled. I want you to be happy, whatever that looks like. He paused. And if I'm being honest, I'd like to be part of that, but only if it's what you want too. Part of it how? However you'll have me. He smiled slightly. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I'm just saying the option's there if you want it. Elena felt her heart do something complicated. She'd been avoiding thinking about this, about what Damien meant to her, about whether the gratitude and trust and growing affection she felt was something more. It had seemed safer to leave it undefined, to just exist in the present without naming anything. But maybe that was the old Elena talking, the one who'd learned not to want things because wanting led to disappointment and pain. The new Elena, the one who was learning to make choices and claim space and believe she deserved good things, that Elena could admit the truth. I want you to be part of it, she said quietly. I don't know what that means yet or what it looks like, but I know I'm not ready to say goodbye. Damien's expression shifted into something unguarded. Then we'll figure out the rest as we go. They didn't talk about it more that night, didn't try to define the shape of whatever this was becoming, just existed together in the comfort of not being alone. Elena slept in the same guest room she'd used months ago. It felt different now, less like a shelter and more like a place she'd chosen to be. She fell asleep thinking about tomorrow, about Martin's desperate last grab for control, about how far she'd come from the girl freezing in the snow. The courtroom was smaller than Elena expected. Plain walls, fluorescent lights, a tired-looking judge who seemed annoyed to be dealing with this motion at all. Martin sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, looking thinner and older than Elena remembered. His lawyer, a different one than before, apparently his previous counsel had dropped him, looked deeply uncomfortable. Elena sat in the gallery with Damien on one side and Miranda on the other. Catherine had chosen not to come, calling from Oregon to say she couldn't face seeing Martin again. Elena didn't blame her. The judge called the hearing to order. Martin's lawyer stood and began to argue that his client had been coerced into accepting the plea deal, that he'd been under extreme duress, that he hadn't fully understood what he was agreeing to. It was pathetic. Even Elena could see the holes in the argument. The prosecutor, a sharp woman in her 50s, tore it apart methodically, presenting documentation of every step of the plea process, testimony from Martin's previous lawyer confirming he'd been fully informed and willing, recordings of conversations where Martin had explicitly agreed to the terms. Martin himself kept trying to interrupt, insisting he'd been forced, that people had threatened him, that this was all a setup. The judge told him to be quiet 3 times before threatening him with contempt. Mr. Whitmore, the judge said finally, her patience clearly exhausted, I've reviewed the motion and the evidence. Your plea was entered voluntarily with full knowledge of the consequences in the presence of competent counsel. Nothing presented today changes that fact. But they destroyed my life, Martin burst out. They took everything from me. My business, my money, my reputation. You destroyed your own life through fraud and harassment. The judge cut him off. The plea deal you agreed to was more generous than you deserved. I suggest you accept it gracefully instead of wasting this court's time with frivolous motions. This isn't frivolous. Motion denied. The judge's gavel came down hard. The plea agreement stands. You will serve the full 7 years as agreed, followed by 5 years supervised release. And Mr. Whitmore, if you file another baseless motion, I will consider extending your sentence for contempt. Do you understand? Martin's face had gone red. You can't. I absolutely can. Do you understand? The fight drained out of him. Yes. Good. We're adjourned. The judge stood and left. Guards moved to collect Martin. He looked across the courtroom and his eyes found Elena's. For a moment she saw the old rage there, the desire to hurt her, to punish her for daring to escape his control. Then it faded. Not into acceptance or remorse, but into something worse, defeat. Martin looked old and broken and powerless, exactly what he'd made Catherine and Elena feel for 3 years. Elena waited to feel satisfaction. Instead, she just felt tired. Martin was led away. The courtroom cleared. Miranda gathered her papers. That's it, she said. He can't appeal this. It's done. So he goes back to prison and serves his time. Yes. And you never have to think about him again. Miranda smiled. Congratulations. You're officially free. Outside the courthouse, Elena stood on the steps and breathed in city air. Damien waited a respectful distance away, giving her space to process. You okay? He asked when she finally turned to him. I thought I'd feel different, more triumphant or something. She shook her head. But I just feel empty. That's normal. Closure doesn't always feel like victory. Then what does it feel like? Like an ending. What you do with it after is up to you. They walked back to the car in silence. Elena looked at the city, the buildings and cars and people rushing past with their own problems and crises and moments of grace. She'd been so focused on escaping, on surviving, on destroying Martin that she hadn't thought much about what came after. Now after was here, and it was vast and uncertain and entirely hers to shape. I want to go back to school, she said suddenly. Start this fall if I can. Finish my degree. Okay. And I want to get my own place. Not the penthouse, not the lake house. Somewhere that's mine. I can help with that. I know, but I want to do it myself. Use the money you gave me to build something that's actually mine. She looked at him. I need to prove to myself that I can. Damien's expression was unreadable. Okay. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? Because I'm choosing independence over staying close to you. Elena. He stopped walking and turned to face her. I don't want you dependent on me. I never did. If you need to build a life on your own terms, do it. I'll still be here when you need me. Promise? Promise. Something in Elena's chest unclenched. She'd been afraid, irrationally, maybe, but afraid nonetheless, that choosing herself would mean losing him. That independence came at the cost of connection. But Damien was offering both, space and presence, freedom and support. The kind of relationship she'd never known was possible. Thank you, she said. For what? For understanding what I need before I even knew myself. He smiled. That's what people do when they care about each other. The statement hung between them. Not quite a declaration, but close. Elena felt her heart speed up. Is that what this is? She asked. Caring about each other? I think it's been that for a while now. Damien's voice was careful. But I'm not going to put a label on it if you're not ready. What if I am ready? Are you? Elena thought about it. Thought about the months at the lake house, the dinners and conversations and comfortable silences. Thought about how she felt when Damien called, when he visited, when he looked at her like she mattered. Not because she was broken or needed saving, but because she was herself, and that was enough. Yeah, she said. I think I am. Damien's expression shifted into something warm and open. Good, because I've been waiting. For what? For you to be ready to hear that I'm in love with you. The words landed like a physical thing. Elena's breath caught. You're... what? In love with you. He said it simply, without drama or expectation. I have been for a while. But you needed time and space, and I wasn't going to complicate things by saying it before you were ready to hear it. And you think I'm ready now? I think you're ready to decide for yourself whether you're ready, which is different. He moved closer but didn't touch her. You don't have to say anything back. You don't have to feel the same way. I'm just being honest about where I am. Elena's mind was racing. Love. Damien loved her. Not the broken version he'd found in the snow. Not the grateful victim he'd helped, but her. The person she was becoming. The messy, uncertain, still healing version of herself. I don't know if I love you, she said honestly. I don't know if I even know what love is supposed to feel like. Everything I thought was love before turned out to be control and manipulation. I know. But I care about you, a lot, and I want you in my life, and I think maybe that could become love if I gave it time and space to grow. Then that's enough. Damien smiled. We don't have to rush this. We can take as long as you need. What if I need years? Then I'll wait years. What if I decide I don't feel that way and we're better as friends? Then we'll be friends and I'll deal with it. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. I care about you. I want you to be happy. Everything else is just details we figure out as we go. He finally reached out, taking her hand gently. The only thing that matters is that you're choosing this, whatever this is, because you want to, not because you feel obligated. Elena looked down at their joined hands. His grip was warm, but not tight. She could pull away any time she wanted. He'd let her go if she asked. That certainty, that knowledge that she was free to leave, to choose, to change her mind, made staying feel like an actual choice instead of a trap. I want this, she said. Whatever it becomes, I want to try. Then we'll try. They stood there on the courthouse steps, holding hands, and Elena felt something shift inside her. Not healing exactly. She was learning that healing wasn't a destination but a process, but movement. Growth. The beginning of something that felt like it might eventually become joy. 6 months later, Elena stood in her new apartment, a small one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy but entirely hers, and surveyed her handiwork. Furniture she'd picked out herself. Books on shelves she'd assembled. Photos on the walls of her mother in Oregon, of the lake house, of Damien laughing at something she'd said over dinner. Her life, built from scratch, no one else's rules or expectations or control. The doorbell rang. Elena checked the peephole, a habit she doubted would ever fade, and saw Damien holding takeout bags. "You're early," she said, opening the door. Traffic was light. He kissed her cheek and headed for the kitchen. "How was class?" "Good. Exhausting. I'd forgotten how much work college is." Elena followed him, watching as he unpacked Thai food onto plates. "But I like it. It feels purposeful." Because it is purposeful. They ate dinner at her small table, talking about her classes, his work, her mother's upcoming visit. It had become routine. These dinners, these conversations, this easy domesticity that felt earned instead of given. "I have something to tell you," Damien said when they'd finished eating. Elena's stomach clenched automatically. "Good something or bad something?" "Neutral something." He set his fork down. "Martin's being released early. Good behavior and overcrowding. He'll be out in 3 months. The news should have terrified her. 6 months ago it would have. But now Elena just felt a distant sort of acknowledgement. "Okay," she said. Damien raised an eyebrow. "Okay? That's it? What else am I supposed to say?" Elena leaned back. "He served his time. He gets out. That's how the system works." "You're not scared?" "Of what?" "He has no money, no power, no way to hurt me. The restraining order is permanent. If he comes near me, he goes back to prison." She met Damien's eyes. "I'm not going to spend the rest of my life afraid of a man who's already lost everything." "You've come a long way." "Yeah." Elena smiled. "I have." They cleaned up together, moving around the small kitchen with practiced ease. Elena washed, Damien dried, and they existed in comfortable silence until the work was done. "Stay tonight?" Elena asked when they'd finished. "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." It had taken her months to get to this point, to be comfortable with physical intimacy, to trust that Damien wouldn't use it as leverage, to believe that wanting someone didn't make her weak. But she'd gotten there through therapy and time and Damien's endless patience. They moved to the bedroom. Elena turned off the lights and let herself be held, feeling safe in a way that had nothing to do with guards or panic rooms or restraining orders. This safety came from choice, from trust, from knowing she could leave any time and Damien would let her go. "I love you," she said into the darkness. Damien went still. "What?" "I love you. I've been thinking about it for weeks, trying to figure out if it was real or just gratitude or trauma bonding or whatever my therapist warned me about. But it's not any of those things. It's just love." She lifted her head to look at him. Messy and imperfect and probably too complicated, but still love. "Elena, you don't have to say it back. I know you said it months ago, but that doesn't mean you're required to." He kissed her, soft and certain and full of things words couldn't capture. "I love you too," he said when they broke apart. In case that wasn't clear. Elena laughed and settled back against his chest. It was clear. They fell asleep like that, tangled together in her small bed, and Elena dreamed of nothing at all. The call about Martin came 8 months after his release. Elena was in the middle of student teaching, a rowdy third-grade class that tested her patience daily, but also filled her with a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before, when her phone buzzed with Miranda's number. "He's dead," Miranda said without preamble. "Heart attack. Prison medical examiner confirmed it was natural causes." Elena stepped into the hallway, away from the classroom noise. "When?" 3 days ago. They notified his next of kin, an estranged brother in Nevada, but no one claimed the body. The prison called me because your restraining order was still in the system." Miranda paused. "I'm sorry for your loss." "I'm not," Elena said honestly. "Is that terrible?" "It's honest. And after what he put you through, you're entitled to feel however you feel." After she hung up, Elena stood in the empty hallway and waited for some emotion to hit. Relief, maybe. Or vindication. Or even grief for the stepfather he could have been if he'd been a different person. But she felt nothing. Martin Whitmore was dead, and it changed nothing about her life except removing one final piece of uncertainty. She called Damien. He answered immediately. "Martin's dead," she said. A pause. "How do you feel?" "Nothing. Is that wrong?" "No, it's closure." "I thought closure would feel different." "It usually does, but sometimes it's just an ending." His voice was gentle. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I really am." Elena leaned against the wall. "It's just strange. I spent so long being afraid of him, and now he's just gone. Like he never mattered at all. He mattered in shaping who you became, but he doesn't get to define who you are now. No, he doesn't." Elena checked the time. "I need to get back to class. Dinner tonight. I'll be there." She hung up and went back into the classroom, where 25 third graders were supposedly working on math problems, but were actually engaged in what looked like a paper airplane battle. Elena clapped her hands twice, her signal for attention, and they immediately settled down. "All right, Ushi," she said. "Let's try this again. Who can show me how to solve problem 3? Hands shot up. Elena called on a girl in the front row and watched as she worked through the problem on the board, explaining her reasoning in a way that made the other students lean forward with understanding. This was her life now. Teaching children, building a career, coming home to an apartment that was hers, and a relationship that was hers, and a future that was entirely hers to shape. Martin was dead, but even when he'd been alive, he'd stopped mattering months ago. That night, Elena told Damien about her day. The paper airplane incident, the breakthrough one of her struggling students had, the parent-teacher conference she'd navigated successfully. He listened with the attention he always gave her, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, taking her seriously in a way that still surprised her sometimes. "I want to ask you something," he said when they'd moved to the couch with wine. "Okay. Move in with me." Elena's heart skipped. "What? Not the penthouse. I know you need your own space. But I'm buying a house. Something normal-sized with a yard and room for the life I want to build." He set his glass down. "And I want to build it with you." "Damien, I'm not asking you to marry me or make some huge commitment, just to share space with me. Figure out what this looks like when it's not compartmentalized into separate apartments and scheduled dinners." He met her eyes. "But if you're not ready, that's okay too." Elena thought about it. Thought about the apartment she'd worked so hard to make her own, the independence she'd fought for, the space she'd needed to heal. Thought about whether giving that up would feel like regression or progression. "I need to keep my apartment," she said finally. "At least for now, as a backup. Just in case." "Just in case what?" "Just in case I need it." She couldn't articulate the fear better than that. The fear that depending on someone, even someone as trustworthy as Damien, would somehow trap her again. "I know it's paranoid. It's not paranoid. It's smart." Damien reached for her hand. "Keep the apartment. Keep your independence. Move in with me when and if you're ready. I'm not going anywhere." "You make it sound so easy." "It is easy. I love you. You love me. Everything else is just logistics." Elena wanted to believe that. And maybe, slowly, she was learning to. They moved in together 3 months later. Not to a penthouse or a mansion, but to a modest house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools nearby and a garden Elena immediately started planning. She kept her apartment for 6 months before finally accepting that she didn't need it anymore, that living with Damien didn't make her trapped or powerless, or any of the things she'd been afraid of. Her mother visited for Thanksgiving, bringing her new boyfriend, a soft-spoken man who taught high school English, and made Catherine laugh in a way Elena hadn't heard in years. They all cooked together, crammed around Elena's new dining table, and it felt like family in a way that didn't hurt. "You look happy," Catherine said when they were alone in the kitchen later. "I am happy. I'm proud of you, for surviving, for building this." Catherine gestured vaguely at the house, the life, the future, for not letting what happened destroy you. It tried to. But it didn't. That's what matters. Catherine hugged her tight. "You're stronger than I ever was. You survived too, Mom." Eventually, with a lot of help. Catherine pulled back. "But you fought. You didn't just endure, you actually fought back. I'll always be grateful for that." Elena felt tears burning but blinked them back. "We both made it out. That's what matters." That night, after everyone had left and the kitchen was clean and the house was quiet, Elena stood in the backyard with Damien and looked up at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. Nothing. How different my life is from what I thought it would be." She leaned against him. "A year ago I was still at the lake house, still figuring out how to exist without fear. Now I'm here with you, teaching, building something real. Regrets? None. You? Not one." They stood there in comfortable silence, and Elena thought about the girl in the snow, the one who'd been thrown away like trash and left to die. That girl had survived, had fought, had refused to stay broken, and now that girl was gone, replaced by someone stronger. Someone who knew her own worth. Someone who'd learned that survival wasn't enough. You had to actually live. 6 months later, Damien proposed. Not with grand gestures or public displays, but quietly, over breakfast on a Sunday morning with a simple ring and a simple question. "Will you marry me?" Elena looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd stopped when everyone else drove past, who'd given her tools without demanding payment, who'd waited while she healed and never once made her feel like she owed him anything. "Yes," she said, "but I want a long engagement, at least a year." "Why?" "Because I want to be sure. Not of you, I'm sure of you, but of me. That I'm choosing this because I want it, not because I'm scared to be alone, or because I feel grateful, or because I don't know how to build a life without you." "Fair enough." Damien slipped the ring onto her finger. "Take all the time you need." They were married 18 months later in a small ceremony by the lake. Catherine was there, radiant in pale blue. Rita came, along with half of Damien's organization, people Elena had slowly gotten to know as individuals rather than just shadows providing security. Miranda attended, bringing her wife and a bottle of champagne that cost more than Elena's first car. The ceremony was simple. No religious language, no elaborate vows, just promises to love and support and choose each other every day. Elena wore a dress she'd picked out herself, not because it was expensive or fancy, but because she felt beautiful in it. Damien cried when he saw her, and she cried too, and it was messy and imperfect and exactly right. At the reception, Catherine pulled Elena aside. "I never thought I'd see you here," she said. "Happy, free, choosing a life instead of just surviving one." "Neither did I." Elena watched Damien across the room, laughing at something Rita had said. "But here we are." "Here we are," Catherine echoed, "my beautiful daughter who refused to stay broken." They hugged, and Elena felt the weight of those 3 years finally lift. Not forgotten, she'd never forget, but transformed. What had tried to destroy her had instead revealed her strength. What had tried to cage her had taught her the value of freedom. What had tried to silence her had given her a voice that refused to be quiet. That night, Elena and Damien drove to the house they now shared, the one they'd made into a home through months of small choices and shared moments and learning to exist together without losing themselves. How does it feel? Damien asked as they pulled into the driveway. Being married? The same as before, but also different. Elena looked at the ring on her finger, still getting used to the weight of it. Like I made a promise to something permanent, and for once that doesn't scare me. Good, because you're stuck with me now. I think I can live with that. They went inside, their house, their life, their future, and Elena thought about the girl in the snow one last time. That girl had been afraid, powerless, certain she would die alone and unloved. But she'd been wrong about all of it. She'd survived. She'd found power in choosing herself. She'd learned that love didn't have to hurt, that relationships could be built on trust instead of control, that the past didn't have to define the future. Martin Whitmore had tried to unmake her. Instead, he'd given her the opportunity to make herself into something stronger than he could have imagined. Someone who refused to be a victim. Someone who turned survival into triumph. And now, years removed from that coldest night, Elena finally understood what freedom meant. Not just the absence of fear, but the presence of choice. The ability to wake up every morning and decide who she wanted to be, what she wanted to do, how she wanted to live. She chose love. She chose teaching. She chose Damien and the life they were building together. But most importantly, she chose herself. Every single day. And that, Elena had learned, was the only victory that truly mattered.